I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard it gets, yeah. Better move out the way, cause I'm coming with harder hits. My head is as hard as a brick, but I'm harder than all of this. You better move, you might get knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out.
Recently, Radian came out with a number of compensators for smaller guns, namely the Sig P365. We put them on all the 365 series, and I thought it was one of the best upgrades you could possibly put on a smaller pistol. In fact, it was so good that arguably it made the 365 series the best, flattest shooting gun that I have shot year to date in that size category. Well, they came out with a comp for the 365 XL, and in this model here, the Radian Afterburner Ramjet combo, I have it on a 365 X Macro, non-ported model. So you do have that nearly 4-inch barrel, the Radian comp on there, and then I got the Radian backstrap and Magwell combo as well. I do have the 17-round mags with the true 17-round base pads, because if you're familiar with the standard macro mags, the 17 rounders, they're almost impossible to ever actually get 17 out of them. But with these base pads, you do get 17. And then they interface very well with the magazine well. The only problem I have is that we've now made this pistol into, let's say, a full-blown compact size gun. Well, we can't compare it to compact guns anymore, or let's say slimline compacts, because the problem with the macro, what most people don't realize is that the grip circumference on the bottom is the thickest in its category. It's thicker than the Shadow Systems, it's thicker than the Smith and Wesson, it's thicker than the Canucks. It's just, let's say, a chunky grip. You know, we'll use that term loosely because it's not that chunky, right? But when we go put a Magwell on this pistol and turn this thing into like what I would call a slimline, like full size or compact gun, well, all of a sudden, it starts competing with an entirely different market, in my opinion. And what I've seen from a number of other content creators, they'll take this pistol and they'll throw it against a shield carry comp, or they'll throw it against a 365, or they'll throw it against, let's say, a Prime, or they'll throw it against, you know, the Shadow Systems CR920XP. Well, it doesn't really compete with those because it's bigger. It's bigger in every single dimension. The weight's more. The barrel length is more, the compensator is longer on there, the grip size is different, it's larger, the magwell is larger. Well, then it starts getting into an actual compact size. So today, not only are we obviously going to shoot this pistol, but it doesn't get to stand on its own 2 feet. We're going to now compare it against an actual compact gun, the Smith and Wesson M&P 2.0 carry comp. So this is a 15-round capacity gun, so it has a shorter grip on it, and it's actually shorter than what you get with this macro build. So that's something to take note of, right? And then in addition to that, how it actually is on circumference and actual, let's say, thickness, they're nearly identical because the grips on these two guns, in fact, are a little bit slimmer on the carry comp. Now the slide width is a little bit larger, I would say, on the Smith and Wesson, but we're not talking an amount that really makes any kind of a difference when you're actually shoving it in your pants. And in fact, most of the time when you're talking about how you conceal a gun, you're worried about how that actual grip circumference is. And then the overall length on these two guns is identical. Like, one's not longer than the other. And in fact, you know, when we shot this gun itself, I said that I actually preferred this over the MR920P as far as for overall value. I thought the MR920P shot a little flatter, but this thing comes in at $750 MSRP. This pistol, you have to build it to get it to this stage, right? So you have to buy a 365 X Macro, somewhere close to 600 bucks, buy the Radian, you know, barrel, Ramjet and Afterburner combo. You have to buy that, it's almost $400. So we're already at $1,000. Okay, now you could go out and get just the trigger, get the frame, and get the slide, but then you still need all the rest of it. So I've actually found this cheaper to just buy a regular X Macro and do the rest of it. So after you do that, so then let's say you get the backstrap or Magwell kit on here also. It's another $150 almost. And then you get the base pads, even more money. What you're looking at here with this pistol is you're getting nearly the same performance, or what you would think, for less money, right? So you get this gun out of the box, it's the same size, and it costs you like $400 less. $400 is a lot of money. And on top of that, you're getting full-size optic compatibility versus the smaller ones, so you get larger windows. You get better light compatibility. Now, granted, with the X Macro, you can fit some of the smaller lights, but with this pistol, if you want to go with a larger light, you still can. Now, I have the nightstick light on here that's similar to like the TLR 7A. and they're an okay light. I've used them for a little bit now. They're not my preferred light. I would definitely say get the Streamlight over these. But what I would tell you is that having shot both these pistols, it's really hard for me to push somebody one way or another without showing you guys how these perform. So what I'll do today is I'm going to shoot both of these through a number of different drills, transitions and things like that. We'll show how they go. You know, these are 15 rounds native. Like, you can obviously get a base pad and you can have 17 on here, and when you do that, it's going to be the same length as what the Sig is. Okay, so because this is actually shorter than what the Sig is in overall grip length. The slide has better serrations. If you're going to shoot just the iron sights, they both have good iron sights. The actual finish and textures and things like that I find on the slide from Smith and Wesson is better. This does have ambi controls on the left and right hand side of the gun for the slide stop, slide release. The takedown system on here is pretty standard and all that stuff. Now we'll actually check the triggers. What I'll tell you is I definitely prefer the trigger on our carry comp here. It's a better trigger. It's crisper. It doesn't have that big mushy, like spongy wall that, you know, most Sigs have. So we'll actually test the two of these and see what they are. So let's see what that pull weight here is on our Smith & Wesson. 2 pounds, 12 ounces on the first one. 3 pounds, 7 ounces. So about 3.5 pounds is what this usually is. So that wouldn't surprise me. That's what it is. Okay, so 3 pounds, 12 ounces. So we'll say it's about 3.5 pound trigger on here. Now these, when I've done these in the past, are always about 4. So we'll see what this is. 4 pounds, 5 ounces. 3 pounds, 14 ounces. So it is a heavier trigger, and you know, the overall feel on it is a bunch of sponge, more sponge. Come back and you creep through like it going across like your striker block, and then you're kind of at a wall, and it breaks. It's flat to an extent. They're an okay trigger. They're good in their category, but the minute that you go into like this trigger is significantly better here on the Smith & Wesson. And I was never a fan of Smith & Wesson's triggers. In fact, this is nice. It comes back, it's kind of got that like little bit of grit there, but it has a very crisp and defined wall. That breaks really nice and has a good short reset. The trigger itself is better. It's considerably better. And then what I'll tell you too, like the grip textures that you find on the Smith & Wesson are better themselves. The grip textures that are on the X Macro, they're okay. And this helps here on the back and it feels really nice. But again, that's aftermarket. So you're building a gun to compete with what? Ultimately going into the next category. So this is something that I ultimately want to bring to people's attention and say that you can build these pistols, but there's already pistols that exist, right? And this is one of them. And so we're going to shoot the two of these things. I want you guys to see how they perform. I'll give you my thoughts real time as I shoot the both of them and compare them side by side, but let's get on in the range and see how they perform against each other. To start this off, in this comparison between our carry comp compact 15 round Smith & Wesson and the X Macro XL model, ultimately with the Radian XL comp on here, we're gonna start off shooting our targets. I have one set up here at 10 yards, the other one's at 20, and then our blue steel out there is at 20 as well. So I'm gonna do 3 rounds at 10, 3 rounds at 20, and then 3 rounds at 20 on the steel transition in between. And I'm just gonna go through an entire mag. Something to make note of, 16 rounds is all we can really get in the macro mag to start out today. That's with both of them. You know, it's super easy to get 15 in those, and you can add a base pad, and like I said, it's shorter, so keep that in mind. But we're gonna start off with our XL Macro build in Radian Ramjet combo. She's flat. Yeah. Really, really flat. Very flat shooting gun. Let's check a look at our target real quick. All A-zone. Shanked a couple over here. But overall, you're not really seeing a huge spread, and obviously hit all those. So it shoots very, very flat. You know, is there a huge difference shooting like a longer slide here than what I found on my standard 365 with the Radian? So obviously the shorter one, I just don't feel that. I really don't. I like the back strap and I like the Magwell and all that stuff, feels good, but like that additional length on here, I'm not noticing a difference in performance and how it feels to shoot. So, but of course, with that being said, is we're adding on to that size. So we'll shoot our Smith & Wesson. This pistol, if you guys didn't see the comparison last year that we did between this and the MR920P, I actually preferred this over that pistol. So that tells you a little something. We're gonna do the same test here. Definitely like the slide serrations, and I definitely like how the grip feels on this better. Faster. Less rounds. Less rounds in the get-gat. Show you something. The first 3 rounds out of the gun, and then ultimately, like, I shoot a tighter group with the Smith and Wesson, and threw one over here, and then that. So we're gonna shoot it again out of the Smith and Wesson. Yeah, 230. Run one more. Flatter. Yeah. So I dropped a couple on there on my own, like not really getting the dot on there, but what I would tell you, this is flatter. It is not a huge difference, right? $400 difference? No. Like, that's probably the point that I probably want to make with this video, right? So if you take like the regular X Macro and you build it into a flush comp size, right? So you get the regular 365 Radian build or Radian Ramjet and Afterburner, I think it's worth it. If you do this, I think that this is a better option because they're essentially the same size, and like shooting them, the trigger is a lot better on the Smith and Wesson. It's a noticeably better trigger. In fact, too, like I said, also getting that larger dot size or dot window is nice versus the smaller one here. And like if you're familiar with the CCW from Vortex, they're a good overall size. These two pistols, they both shoot really well. But like I said, I think that this one, how it performs, how it feels in the hand, because it almost feels like, what I would actually tell you is like, you'll notice like right here, this space, like the actual like grip, you know, width per se is wider on here. So it fills a large hand better while also still maintaining a very, very similar overall grip width that is actually shorter, right? Because like if you line up the top of the slide and the red dots and all that stuff, you see how much shorter it actually is. I mean, we're talking, you're at like 3/4 of an inch difference. You know, granted it's only 15 rounds, but I don't know, I mean, two rounds ain't gonna make or break you, most likely. So let's keep shooting them though. They both shoot great. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. Very hard to beat the two of these pistols. I think that what I can tell you is like, for the money and a proven track record with the M&P series of pistols, I don't know that you could beat this pistol. The carry compact model here with the 15 round capacity, polymer frame, the slide serrations, the sights and all that stuff. The optics cut should be deeper and sights should be taller, but for 70 bucks, I can add new sights to it. It's really hard to beat the Smith and Wesson, and they're proven. It's really, it's a good pistol. Let's keep shooting these things. But you know, without having shot or needing to shoot anymore, I can tell you that for the money, you can't beat this versus that. Like that's not worth the extra money. I'll tell you, a regular 365 and getting a shorter grip and all that stuff, yeah, it is. But like that, you're building that gun into a size range that competes with this, and then this beats it in overall value, and performance-wise, you're not gaining enough to justify $500 extra. So let's shoot some more. Next thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna shoot 3 rounds from retention, do a reload, and then I'll shoot 3 rounds at our other torso that's now back there about 10 yards. Yeah, no bad or no issues like shooting it like muzzle blast wise at retention position. In fact, you get more gas blowback from the target itself. Nothing like that from porting from the barrel. The target over there looks good. My hits are good. So we'll shoot our next one here. I did notice muzzle blast coming from the Radian versus what I had with the carry comp. Pretty noticeable difference, and I could really feel it. I don't know you'll be able to see it on camera, but you know, I can feel off the target. Group size is about the same. Unfortunately, my Neomag clip decided to come out with the magazine when I went to do the reload. But then back here on the other target, group size and all that stuff looks about the same. But like I said, shooting from close quarters retention, same position and all that stuff, I noticed that there was more muzzle blast coming from. Now granted, the port on here is a lot larger and it's a full-blown comp versus just a chunk port. So you know, that's to be expected, but it's something to certainly take note of. All right, for this one, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do 2 rounds on the closer paper here for me, into the head. I'm gonna do a tack reload, and then I'm gonna do 2 rounds into the head on the further target. We have 2 rounds in the gun, 1 in the magazine. So we'll do a reload, so it's gonna be 2, reload 1. I can tell you I really like the magazine releases on the Smith and Wesson pistols themselves. They feel good, and then the slide stop slide release itself, I'd say they're enlarged, right? But they feel really nice, especially pushing down on them. When I first got this pistol, it was super tight, but that detent and how it performs has gotten a lot better, and it's very nice to do. We're gonna do the same thing now with the 365 XL Macro build with the XL Radian Ramjet. Okay, we have 1 round in the magazine, 1 round in this magazine, so 2 rounds in the gun total. Magwell is a lot nicer here on the Radian one. You know, it's a noticeable difference on like inserting the mags and how that feels. Like I said, the slide stop slide release on the Smith and Wesson feels a lot better. This feels better. Performance-wise, shooting, not a huge difference. When you're trying to shoot faster, what I'll tell you is that a trigger that's a little bit lighter with a crisper break does assist you in making more precise shots under, let's say, stress or trying to shoot it faster. So the Smith & Wesson gets a nod on that one. And on top of it, like I said, releasing the slide with your thumb versus coming over the top does work better on the Smith & Wesson as well. Now the magwell on this feels better. It should. It's longer. It has an actual magwell. So I got a few more rounds to shoot. I'll give you guys our final opinion on the 2 of these. I kind of gave you some of that already, but I think it's important to shoot enough of them to really give you guys a good look at both. All right, with these 2 pistols, I shot a number of drills today. So I think that the big thing that really comes down to these 2 pistols is what are you gaining for more money, if you ask me, okay? So this base pistol, let's say you buy a macro, about 600 bucks, and then you get the barrel and comp from Radian. It's another almost $400, it's like $380 and some change. The back strap and magwell combo is about 120, and then you get the true 17 round base pads. I mean, you're looking at a price here on this pistol that's almost $1,200, right? And that's for this. They're necessarily, or let's say they're the same size. In fact, if anything, the Smith & Wesson has a shorter grip, which will actually in turn also make it easier to conceal. You know, the slide thickness and all that stuff, they're not different enough to really make a difference. The grip thickness though is actually a little bit less on the Smith and Wesson. It has a little bit of a swell back here, but you can go to a smaller mag or back strap if you want to. The grip textures are better. The slide serrations are better on the Smith and Wesson. The compensator on the Radian does more, right? I think it's more effective. The port on the carry comp is very effective and it works really well. I definitely do not believe that you're buying more performance with this pistol. For two pistols necessarily in the same, let's say, size range for these two guns, they're just not different enough to justify spending the extra money to build something like this when you already have the Smith and Wesson carry comp available. It's really well done. It's got an ambi slide release, which this does not. You can flip the magazine release around, which obviously you can on this one as well. It's got a larger trigger guard, and you'll notice that. It's a pretty significant difference. So if you're somebody that's worried about the size of the trigger guard on the 365 series of pistols, this is for you, right? It has more compatibility with a number of different lights. You don't have to use these compact, like TLR7 size lights. This one you do, okay? You can use a full-size light on this Smith & Wesson pistol. Magazine compatibility, this has to take Sig X Macro magazines. This right here can take any of your Smith & Wesson mags. Now granted, 15 ones, but you can use a 17 rounder, you can use a 21 rounder, it just needs a sleeve on it. And then on top of all that stuff is, like I said, the price difference. Again, you're just not getting, let's say, $500 more performance with this pistol build that you don't get with this. The two of them, shooting these side by side today, you guys have seen we've shot a lot of the 365. So I've shot this way more than I've shot this. I haven't shot this pistol since we did a comparison video last year with the MR920P. I saw no difference in shootability between the two of them. In fact, at some point, trying to make more precise shots due to the better trigger, the carry comp from Smith & Wesson was a better overall decision. It felt better trying to make harder shots. They both perform very well. There's not really a bad option, right? But guys, in the essence of making gun reviews honest again and keeping that mantra, I'll never sit there and tell you that you should spend the extra money for this when you can just buy this. That's as simple as can be. The Smith & Wesson M&P carry comp compact model here at the price like $750, they're usually less. It's very hard to beat. It's a really damn good pistol. This is good. But if you're gonna do this and set this up, set it up smaller and make it a more concealable pistol. Don't set it up so that it's the size of one of these, because this is a better buy. But guys, if you disagree, you got a better option, or you think there's something else we should throw against this or this pistol, or do a comparison, do it head to head, let us know in the comment section below.